Hello and welcome to the next video from Drazine160, and today I am going to give you a bit of an update on a project that I have been working on for the past probably best part of 2-3 years, maybe even longer than that, but the X72500 is the model that I am making, and it's one of my favourite trains that the SNCF have. I don't know why. It's notoriously unreliable, and it's not as nice as the older units and not as good as Loco, but it's, I don't know, there's just something quite nice about it that I quite like. Now, some of you will remember that I have done some versions of this before, and they're very fine, I suppose. I think that, I've painted them up and they look okay. But I was always a bit disappointed because I had to use an X2800 chassis. And they're quite hard to come by, they're quite expensive. The model, worked reliably as one of those chassis could. And I was quite pleased with it. But I felt that it just needed a bit more work doing to it. And I think the chassis wasn't quite right. I think the couplings didn't work very well. And it just needed a bit more effort put into it. So I wanted to revisit that, and that's what I've been doing since probably about August this year. And I've been sort of looking at what improvements can be made and where, what really needs to happen to make this model that I've done in CAD, in 3D print, into a more sort of up-to-date, better model that is sort of more reflective of what could be done with the technology that I've got. So the old models were, well, they've kind of been consigned to the sideline, and they'll sort of probably sit at the back of my layout at some point. But the sort of, they have been very useful in sort of giving me the some of the internal dimensions that I needed. And the sort of pivotal moment for this was when I found an E610 available for a reasonable price, and it came with a sound decoder, and as well as the sort of rear decoder as well. So it worked out as being quite good value for money to sort of get a full 4-carriage train set. And the sort of the interesting thing is that with a full 4-carriage train set, it gives me the opportunity to do perhaps just a little more than just a 2-carriage set. I could look at potentially doing a couple of dummy units as well, which is something that I really perhaps hadn't considered as part of this. But the actual model itself is very nice. It's always a bit disappointing to have to chop it up, but at the end I sort of thought, well, I really want an SNCF train and not a Swiss tilting train in this instance. So I have also found that the chassis is very good. It's very reliable. The sound decoder has actually, you'll hear later on, been sent off to be reblown and sort of new sounds put on there by Mr. Bastiani in France, and he's done an excellent job with that, and I'll show you that later. This is the sound decoder as it originally was, and it's also the chassis in its original form. You can see that it's quite long at the sort of front, which obviously means I'm going to have to trim it down, but I've done that before with my Z2 fleet, and that's with a similar type of chassis with the sort of the die-cast parts. All I did was get the Dremel to it, and it was a fairly simple thing to do. Most of this will be sort of hidden away underneath the bodywork of the auto rail when it gets done, so it's not a big deal to have to carve these things up. The main thing I wanted was the distance between the two bogies being right and a decent sort of working model inside. So here is one of the carriages which I am going to use for the sort of dummy units. And you can also see this is sort of me testing more the dummy units. This is for the early incarnations, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But I originally was going to have these sort of separate side skirts that the main bodywork fit on top of, but it got too complicated really. But one of the things, just to sort of explain a little bit about, is the front coupler on the dummy units means that I'll be able to effectively run a 4-carriage set with the 2 dummy units on the inner side there. And here's an image of the older green resin that I used at the start of the process. It's not that great. The detail was okay, I suppose, but I think that the flexibility of the new ABS light resin is much better. So I'm going to go a little bit of a walkthrough now of the sort of various different incarnations of the X72500 that I've done over the last sort of few years. This is the sort of painted example in the TER livery. Up close you can see that it's really not that great in terms of the work that I've done on the painting. I think at the time it was okay, but I've got some better paints now that are more representative of the colours, so I'm looking forward to redoing that. This example here is one of the ones with the side skirts. You can see the mess sort of trying to print that straight line. This was one of the early prints that I did of this, and you can see it's not the best sort of quality, but it was there to sort of prove the concept. One of the key features that you'll see in the snout there is that I've actually put holes to the headlights, which I'm hoping I'll be able to add in some optics and to be able to get them to work off the chassis, which is going to be a real bonus of having a chassis with all of the stuff plugged into it. Next examples are the ones with the skirt integrated into it. You've got one without the snout with the coupler protruding through it, but you also have the original on the left there, which is the version with the sort of full snout, as it were. And you see these in various different guises on the network with the snout open or the snout closed. And there's various different incarnations. There's minor modifications on these ones, but the one on the right is the sort of latest version, which is pretty much as I think it will be. There's a slight crack in the body of that one that was due to the printing, and you can see in the front there, the near side of the image, the glass or glazing that I'm going to be using. Unfortunately, I've been having some real trouble trying to get this to print properly. And this one, it just sort of went all over the place. So I'm going to try some new concepts to try and get that to print a little bit better, a little bit neater, and a little bit more reliably. I think the cold weather's not helping at the moment with the 3D printer, but you can see a lineup there of some of the iterations of this. It takes quite a lot of time just to get these things going right and to work out what works, but having a printer at home really helps with that. Here are the two chassis that I'm going to use for the powered and the rear unit. You can see, that they've got a lot of interior detail. I'm not sure if I'll change some of this. It might be too difficult to actually do that considering how integrated they are, but you can see there that there's quite a lot of functionality there. You've got lighting, you've got the sound decoder, the rear, you've got the functional decoder for the lights, so it will be a really well functional unit. The coupling mechanism between the two units is another thing that I'm working on as well. I'm going to do a 3D print of the coupling bar, because the versions that come with the E610 are too long or too short, depending on which unit you're trying to couple. As such, I have decided to make my own. And you can see this is a version of the dummy unit. That'll be one of the intermediate trailers that's actually mounted on one of the sort of spare trailers, and yeah, it looks pretty reasonable. But you can see here that the coupler sticking out the back is far too long, so I'm going to make a shortened version for that. But for the snout coupler, it's going to be slightly longer because it doesn't really fit. But I've been quite pleased with the way this has come out. I think for this I could probably do some slightly better interiors that will fit on the chassis, which will be quite useful. But yeah, this was just a sort of proof of concept, an early print, and I'm quite pleased with how that has gone. There's still a fair bit more work that needs to happen on those to make them work properly, but yeah, I'm pleased with the chassis as a whole. It's a very reliable chassis, and it's got a lot of the functionality that I need, which I didn't really have on some of the other ones. So here we are with the sound decoder in use. I'm probably going to talk a little bit quieter. I don't know if you'll be able to hear everything that's going on, but you can hear behind the scenes here that there's a lot of different functionality going on here. There's the various different horns, doors closing, and sounds. What I really do like about this particular sound decoder is that it sounds a lot different to the X72500 fleet, which they have a very similar sort of engine. I think it's a Cummins engine, I'm not entirely sure, but the engine in them is very similar, and as such the sound decoder on the UF model does sound, in my opinion, to be quite similar to the X72500. This version doesn't, and I'm very pleased about that. What I really want is in the fleet is to have stuff that sounds different, and I heard a pair of these units at Limoges recently, just sort of idling away, and they've got a real sort of grunt to just standing still. The air conditioning packs on top, I think, are sort of part of that. But yeah, you've got a lot of great sounds here. You've got a lot of station announcements. You've got all the different compressors and various different noises. I'm really pleased with this. It's going to make this model really, in the next league of the versions that I make myself. So it's really given me the sort of motivation to continue. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this video, really, is to sort of show off what it does. But please forgive the mess on my layout at the moment. Unfortunately, I'm not someone who keeps things very tidy, so hopefully you'll be able to forgive me for that. But let's just sit back and listen to some of the music now of the engine. Now, that acceleration curve was something that's on board the locomotive, so that's quite handy. Just set the throttle up and it goes at that speed. And probably just needs a bit more volume on this one. You might be able to see at the top the yellow tape that's taping on the speaker. I had to remove the housing just to make the body fit into the chassis. I'm trying to run around the railway room just to get the footage of it. So, yep, just to finish off here, this is the unit on test. It's propelling because I couldn't get the couplings to work properly, but it gives an idea, it gives a flavour for what's happening on the project. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed just having a quick update here. There's plenty more to do. Hopefully the glazing will be done soon. That's the next big job to try and get right. And then I think after that it's making sure the lighting all works and gets through that. And once that's all done, it'll be a test fit, getting it all working right. After that, it will be painting, and I'm going to be getting into, I think, a bit of airbrushing to try and make my skills in the painting area a lot better than they are. And as I said, I've got the correct paints from AMF87, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing this, look, a really good model and something that I can really be proud of. So that's my update there. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, click the like button. And if you really like it, you can click the subscribe button. Yeah, and I'll see you when I next do another video. But thanks for watching.